So I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it off to Shawn. So my name is Sarrah Lal. I'm a faculty member within the Department of Medicine. I'm a director of a program called the Health Ventures program, and I'm also co-lead of this emerging community of practice called Medical Entrepreneurship Nexus. Shawn?
I'm Shawn. I'm an emergency physician at St. Joe's Healthcare Hamilton, assistant professor in the Department of Medicine. I do some innovation lead work under the St. Joe's strategic plan locally, and I lead the quality community practice in Hamilton under the Department of Medicine as well. So we try to find two people that kind of bridge these gaps or know these spaces really well. And I think Sarah is cleverer than I am in this space. So let's see what she's got to say.
Shawn is very humble, so we'll see what he's got to say. He has a lot to say on this topic too. So based on the abstract, which I assume drew you to this conversation we're having right now, what we're going to be talking about here is the challenges that are faced by peers across healthcare and education as they relate to the quality improvement initiatives that you probably have had or are currently having within your respective institutions, and then be able to talk a little bit about the differences between innovation and more traditional approaches to quality improvement. Oftentimes, these are kind of seen as the same thing, and in other times, they're seen as very different things. And so we're really curious to explore how you perceive the differences during this brief conversation. And so we wanted to kind of understand a little bit more about the challenges that you face in quality improvement in your respective spaces. So I wonder if we could kind of get a little bit of a conversation going in the chat. Does anyone here want to volunteer some of the challenges that they've faced within the QI space, irrespective of where you actually work? Okay, having nurses be able to attend quality of care reviews, time, buy-in, engagement, awesome. Many physicians don't even know where to get started, perfect. It's somebody else's job, yes, all the time. Your responsibility, I don't want to think about this. Okay, maybe a few more. It's probably shared experiences by many. Kind of no time, have no idea how to approach it. Not able to access the right information, not understanding change management, implementation practices. Yes, embracing the idea that QI is part of our jobs. Driven by institutional priorities rather than those of us that are in the working unit and have, yeah, exactly. Okay, perfect. So lots of shared experiences, I think, even within those few different comments, there seemed to be a lot of overlap. And so hopefully we can get into a bit of a discussion now and in the following kind of sessions where we dive into these topics in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to pass it off to Shawn right now just to talk a little bit about quality improvement and innovation in terms of the definitions.
Yeah, so we use these to kind of anchor the different practices and different fields, just because it kind of provides us the lens as we move forward. Really, QI, as it's designed, as it's meant to be experienced, is really the science of iterative process change and analysis and study. And so this famous kind of PDSA cycle, right? Plan, do, study, act, repeat, repeat, repeat until you get to an endpoint where you're happy with the outcomes that are achieved as a result of that. We focus on a series of domains that are relatively well defined by the Institute of Medicine, and they're outlined here in the document. Innovation really, in its broadest sense, is this idea of a creation of new value. And we can anchor this quite nicely, actually, in the idea of the Quadruple Aim, which is to reduce costs, enhance patient care and caregiver experience, and improve population health outcomes. You will definitely be familiar with the idea of the Triple Aim, which is everything there with the exception of caregiver experience, but everybody's leaning into this idea of the Quadruple Aim, and I think it's the right thing to do, because if we love the work we do and if we identify with it, we can innovate and improve much easier. So if you have any challenges with these, as these go on, as we continue, just free flow it into the chat. Don't wait for us to prompt you. Just keep putting them in there. We want to hear what you have to say.
And so this is sort of the way in which we're looking to create not just two separate definitions, but kind of lay these concepts of quality improvement and innovation across more of a broad spectrum. And so this is from an article from the HBR, so or the Harvard Business Review back in 2012, an article called Innovation Ambition Matrix. And here, this is a really great way to define types of innovation, from core innovation to adjacent innovation to transformational types of innovation, and really thinking about where QI would play across that spectrum and where it's more maybe traditional kind of types of innovation definitions that we may be more accustomed to. So as you can see here, the QI as a form of core innovation means that we're optimizing what currently is in place for the current user base. So the existing customers, whether they're patients or administrators or clinicians, whoever within our healthcare organizations is of relevance in that context. And then we're talking about more innovation orientation. We're talking about expanding from what we're currently doing into new arenas, so new services that haven't been delivered before, new patient populations or clinical problems that can be challenged. And so we're kind of bringing that into what we're currently able to do. And then transformational innovation, this is a little bit more difficult to wrap your head around kind of conceptually. However, this would be creating things for markets that don't exist yet. So the great example would be Uber, creating a demand for access to vehicles at any place, at any time you want. But they obviously had to really talk to and play around and de-risk things for various stakeholder groups before they were able to be as successful with that creation of a new market at the end of a couple of years of trial and error. So when we're thinking about these core, adjacent, and transformational types of innovation, I think it becomes quite clear that for each type of thinking, it's actually going to require different people, different processes, different tools, and yes, very different ways of thinking. And how do we accomplish this as part of a existing culture, existing organization, and existing kind of set of processes that often exist within our respective organizations? So we have a few different case examples, which Shawn is going to lead you through. And what we want you to think about is whether these case examples actually are kind of able to be matched to the different types of innovation that we just talked about on the previous slide. So looking at whole process, at new fixes to old problems, and to integrated problem-solving strategies. Shawn, do you want to just review the cases with us?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll quickly go through them, but I want folks to anchor this, and I want you to feel this as kind of a surrogate of what's happening, okay? We've all been in places where people are trying to use quality improvement to solve a problem or to solve a process or to solve an issue that would have been better off if we closed the door, threw a stick of dynamite inside it, closed the door, and exploded the process. And we've all been part of something where we're iterating on something where the bones is already bad. And in those contexts, we need to ask ourselves, are we applying the right tool here? Because this idea of applying a singular tool, that one thing is the panacea to fix any environment, including healthcare, is actually banal if we spend time thinking about it. The easy problems are solved. The complexity exists now. Now we need to apply different tools. So I'm going to pull in some different examples. If we're looking at whole process examples, you're over lunch with a friend, she reveals she has worsening back pain. She's tried to, deal with her symptoms for 2 weeks. And then she's called her family physician who's offered her an appointment in 3 weeks' time. And so now you have this huge workflow process that you might say, okay, well, how do I get into this? Where's the next target? How do I sort this out? How do I move forward? New fixes to old problems. I've never been in a quality improvement session with my peers where somebody hasn't brought up no-show rates in their outpatient clinics, right? And it's a very frequent problem. But let's not talk about whether you should mail something or call somebody or provide a reminder. Those are all born out of the literature and they're very well published. Maybe the next question is, let's think about this in a new way. Let's gamify it, or let's create an application that fixes this, or let's try to sort this out. Where you can see that that's a very different take than a classic quality improvement go. That's a very different, let's iterate on this process. That's like, we're probably not even addressing the right root cause here. Let's move forward. And then lastly, there's this idea of integrated problem solving, where if you were trying to fix like a wait time issue in an emergency department for radiology as an example, well, you might look to do this iterative change process, and you find a nidus within the entire process that's amenable to change, but then you deploy like an innovation strategy actually to achieve your endpoints there, rather than this idea of, well, I'm going to queue things, or I'm going to put posters up, or I'm going to talk to people, or I'm going to, lean on data reporting. And so you can see how in each one of these different examples, although in some ways they are this iterative quality improvement approach, in other ways, they require sometimes something more, or the combination of two different things to bring in true solutions. And we need to pay attention to this. This is a message to us that there's no one modality, there's no one thing. We need to spend time thinking.
No, excellent. And perhaps there's an opportunity for us to get a little bit of a dialogue in the chat right now. So I'm sure that some of you have experienced similar-ish types of challenges within your respective organizations. So out of curiosity, do you look at doing core innovation, so kind of more quality improvement in the traditional sense, or do you find that you're going towards the adjacent innovation or the transformational innovation, where you're actually trying to create new processes, new products, perhaps, to be able to solve the questions that haven't really been addressed in like a system level way?
It's probably a mixture of both. This is Sunil speaking. Sunil Yupak speaking. Hey, it's probably a mixture of both, depending on what the priorities of your research program or your QI program looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine people have some personal interests, so that may be where the more transformative stuff comes in. But if your institution has its priorities, then I think, if I'm using your language correctly, that's where the core process stuff may also mix and match. So, I mean, Shawn and I work in merge, so there are things that we can control, and there's other things that are above our pay grade, as it were.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Sunil.
I think, Sarah, we'd be very hard pressed to find somebody who regularly uses transformational innovation as a method to change environments. I mean, as you know, they're so energy intensive and time intensive and resource intensive that only dedicated things can get to those. And it's funny because when you read all these articles, they tell you that as an organization, you should only have one or two transformational agendas, and that's it, because otherwise you can't possibly have the bandwidth to do it. So it's an interesting way to think about it, but it's interesting to see what folks' experience of that might be.
Harder to move beyond core innovation when larger system level commitment is required. Hard to find space for adjacent or transformational innovation. Thank you, Amanda. So this is a really interesting balance that we try to strike, because Shawn works within the QI space and also the emergency department. I work exclusively in the innovation space. And I will tell you right now that when I provide training or programs to learners, whether they're physicians or nurses or folks at the graduate or undergraduate level, everyone wants to do transformational work, right? Everyone wants to create new ways of doing things, completely irrespective of what is currently really acceptable within the system level. And so when it comes to trying to kind of bridge that gap, what we almost have to teach ourselves within the healthcare organizations we work in is how to be maybe more able to kind of have conversations with innovators who want to bring in these more transformational technologies, but also from the innovator perspective, understanding the realities and the complexity, as Shawn has been describing, that is inherent to a system that isn't really built to constantly be changing, right? We're built to stabilize, to improve, optimize over time, but not necessarily to, as Shawn's saying, kind of throw a grenade or something and completely blow everything up and then see what happens. So interesting, but also I think based on everyone's experiences to be expected. The kind of work that we're trying to do right now is asking questions like, are we truly reaching our full potential when we have expertise in only one of these modalities? So the core innovation, the adjacent innovation, or the transformational innovation. And how do we improve the impact of our works as QI professionals or as innovators by actually being able to bridge the three areas?